The airplane cabin buzzed with chatter as passengers settled into their seats. But one man stood out right away. A single dad, carrying more than just his own bag, struggled to keep his little daughter calm while trying to stow their luggage. Instead of offering a hand, a few passengers smirked. Some even laughed quietly at the sight of him juggling everything on his own. He kept his head down, clearly used to the judgment, but his daughter's soft voice calling Daddy made the moment even more heartbreaking. It seemed like just another flight where people would dismiss him as someone who didn't quite belong. But then, something unexpected happened. A flight attendant walking by suddenly froze, her expression shifting from casual politeness to sharp respect. Within seconds, the entire crew's demeanor changed. The whispers of laughter from nearby rows fell silent as every flight attendant turned their attention to the man. Passengers glanced at each other, confused, wondering what they had missed. Why were the crew now addressing him so formally, even calling him sir with a tone that carried weight and honor? What secret did this single dad carry that could change the way everyone on that plane saw him? The dad shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with all the sudden attention. His little girl tugged at his sleeve, asking why everyone was staring, but he only gave her a gentle smile and whispered something that made her giggle. The passengers who had laughed earlier now sat quietly, their curiosity growing. Something about the way the crew stood a little straighter, their eyes locked on him, told everyone that this man wasn't just an ordinary traveler. As the plane prepared for takeoff, whispers rippled through the rows. Who was he? Why did the flight attendants address him with such respect, almost like they were in the presence of someone important? Some thought maybe he was a government official, others guessed he had some hidden rank or status. The truth, though, wasn't obvious. All that could be seen was a single father with a tired face, carrying the weight of more than just parenthood. The daughter leaned against him, her tiny hand gripping his larger one, as if she knew he was stronger than anyone else on that plane. And still, the mystery deepened. What had this man done in his past that made seasoned flight crew members instantly recognize him? As the plane climbed higher, the tension inside the cabin seemed to grow heavier. The single dad sat quietly, almost trying to disappear, but the way the flight crew continued, glancing his way, made it impossible. One attendant lingered near his row longer than necessary, her expression caught between admiration and concern. Passengers began exchanging theories in hushed tones, each guest adding to the unease. Some even pulled out their phones, pretending to scroll but secretly stealing glances, hoping for clues. From the window seat, the little girl tapped the glass, pointing excitedly at the clouds. Her innocence contrasted sharply with the storm of questions swirling around the adults. The dad leaned in close, his low voice calming her, but his shoulders stayed tense. It was as if he knew this attention wasn't going away, and maybe, just maybe, he had been hoping to avoid it all along. Across the aisle, a businessman whispered that he'd seen a similar reaction from military staff once before. Others doubted, shaking their heads, insisting there had to be another explanation. Still, the mystery clung to him like a shadow. Who exactly was this man that strangers mocked only moments ago, yet the crew treated with an almost unshakable reverence? The flight settled into uneasy silence, but the air still crackled with tension. Every so often a flight attendant would pass by, offering the single dad a respectful nod or quietly asking if he needed anything, far more attentive than to anyone else. The passengers who had mocked him earlier now shifted uncomfortably in their seats, realizing there was something important they hadn't understood. Still, no one dared to ask him directly. It was as though an invisible line had been drawn. He was no longer just another traveler. The little girl soon drifted to sleep against his arm, her head resting peacefully on his shoulder. But her father's eyes stayed fixed on the aisle, watchful, alert. He didn't relax the way most people did once the flight was underway. If anything, his posture grew straighter, his presence more commanding. The crew seemed to sense it too, adjusting their movements, whispering among themselves as though preparing for something unspoken. The passengers grew restless. Was this man hiding a past that could change the way they saw him forever? Why did the crew treat him like someone carrying a history far greater than what met the eye? With every passing minute, the unanswered questions pressed heavier, pulling the plane toward a moment that no one on board would forget. Just when the tension seemed like it couldn't grow heavier, the captain himself left the cockpit and stepped into the cabin. The murmur of voices instantly hushed. It was rare enough for a pilot to leave mid-flight, but the way he walked straight toward the single dad made every heart on board skip a beat. The captain's expression carried the same respect the crew had shown, but deeper, like recognition. He paused by the row, gave a sharp nod, and addressed the man with a title no one else could hear clearly. The only word that carried across the quiet cabin was "sir," and it landed with weight. Gasps rippled through the passengers. Even those who had remained indifferent now leaned in, desperate for answers. The dad simply nodded back, his face unreadable, as if this kind of encounter wasn't new to him. His daughter stirred in her sleep, unaware that her father had just shifted from being the target of whispers to the center of a growing mystery. But before the passengers could settle their questions, an announcement crackled over the intercom. The captain's calm voice carried a hint of urgency. "Ladies and gentlemen, we may need your full cooperation shortly. The stakes had suddenly changed, and the eyes of everyone turned back to the man they once mocked. The cabin filled with uneasy murmurs as the captain's words echoed overhead. Passengers sat straighter, their eyes darting between the crew and the man at the center of it all. The single dad, once ridiculed, didn't flinch. Instead, he carefully shifted his sleeping daughter into a more secure position and rose to his feet. In that moment, the truth could no longer be hidden. The captain addressed him directly, his voice steady but filled with respect. "We'd be honored if you would assist us, Colonel." Gasps broke out across the rows. The laughter from earlier felt shameful now, replaced with awe. The passengers realized this was no ordinary father struggling to get through a flight. He was a decorated veteran, a man who had led others in situations far more dangerous than turbulence in the sky. The flight crew snapped to attention, not out of courtesy, but recognition of a leader who had earned their deepest respect. The dad gave a small nod, humility written on his face, as if he wished the spotlight wasn't on him at all. He sat back, down, cradling his daughter gently, returning to the quiet role of a parent. But just as relief began to wash over the cabin, the captain added one final line over the intercom. "And passengers, you should know, we didn't expect to need his expertise tonight." The entire plane froze, realizing the story was only beginning. The passengers held their breath, bracing for the worst. But after several tense minutes, the captain's voice returned with calm assurance. The earlier concern was only a precaution. An unexpected technical issue had been handled swiftly, and the aircraft was safe. A wave of relief swept through the cabin, though the lingering respect for the single dad remained. People no longer saw him as the tired parent, struggling with bags and a restless child. They saw the quiet strength of a man who had once carried responsibilities far greater than anyone could imagine. The crew continued their duties, but their eyes often drifted back to him with gratitude. Passengers who had mocked him at boarding now avoided his gaze, their earlier laughter replaced by silent shame. Yet he seemed unfazed, more focused on keeping his daughter comfortable than on how others saw him. She stirred awake, smiling up at him, never knowing how much her father had impressed a plane full of strangers. As the flight descended and the wheels touched the runway, one truth hung heavy in every heart: respect should never come only after revelation. That day reminded everyone on board that behind every quiet face, there may be a story worth honoring.